What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time now to make my official prediction for the 2023 NCAA Tournament Basketball Tournament, also known as March Madness. The bracket came out yesterday. There were not plenty of surprises from yesterday. We know the top seeds going into this March Madness bracket, and of course, we knew who those top 5 teams are going to be. But the 2023 bracket came out yesterday. The games will begin on Tuesday, so that will be starting tomorrow. It will start with the first 4 games, and I think the real games do begin not until Thursday, so we still got a little bit of ways to go, but we're going to make our official prediction for this March Madness bracket. If you also are doing a bracket, I wish you good luck on your bracket as well. So, we're going to make our official prediction here for this March Madness tournament. I'm going to do my best here. I know I won't have a perfect bracket this year. I'm going to try my best, though. And like I said, if you are a big fan of our channel, and also, if you want to see more basketball content on this channel, let me know down in the comments below. So let's get right into it here with my 2023 March Madness prediction. And this is what the bracket looks like. We're going to run through the brackets first here. We'll start with the South region. We got Alabama at number 1. No surprise whatsoever that they put Alabama here at number 1. The 16 seeded matchups here, TAMU, CC, I think that's how you pronounce them, and then you got Southeast Missouri here, University here at this is 16. That will be one of those first 4 games there in the South region. The winner of that game, maybe coming up tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, will play Alabama in the first round of that South region. In the 9 versus 8 matchup, we got Maryland taking on West Virginia, so we got a Big 10 versus Big 12 matchup here. And then in the 13 versus number 4 seed, we got Virginia taking on Furman. This is a pretty good Furman team. I think they have a really good shot to maybe pull off an upset here against Virginia. Then we got the 12 versus 5 seeded matchup. We got San Diego State, and then we got Charleston here as the number 12 seed. This is a pretty good Charleston team, and I got to tell you, this South region is full of really good double-digit seeds. Furman and Charleston, both of these teams are very winnable teams and everything like that, so keep an eye on both of those teams there, Furman and Charleston. The number 2 seed here in the South region is Arizona. They've always been pretty good at basketball. They'll take on Princeton here, Princeton Tigers here in the first round. Then we got as a number 7 seed, Missouri Tigers. They've been a big surprise this year overall in 2022-23 college basketball season. They will play Utah State here in the first round. Number 10 seed. This looks like it's going to be a pretty good matchup here, but this is a well-motivating Missouri team. Then we got Baylor here as the number 3 seed. Then we got UCSB here as a number 14 seed. Baylor's been kind of an up-and-down team this year. We'll see how they play out here in this NCAA tournament. And then the 6 versus 11 seed, we got Creighton here and NC State. NC State kind of snuck in there in the NCAA tournament, so looking forward to these matchups. I'm looking forward to that West Virginia-Maryland matchup, and I'm also looking forward, to who Alabama will play in that first round. I'm looking forward to Furman and Charleston to see how far they go, so that is the South region. Let's go now to the Midwest region. The number 1 overall seed is going to be Houston. What would it be like here for Houston to go all the way to the Final Four and play in their hometown? That would be something there. There'll probably be a lot of Houston fans if they were to make it to the Final Four. They'll play Northern Kentucky here, the number 16 seed here in the Midwest region, and the number 9 seed versus number 8 matchup. I'm looking forward to this matchup here. It's the Auburn Tigers versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. This will be the 8 and 9 seeded matchup. This will be a pretty good one here. Bruce Pearl's team, took a loss in that SEC quarterfinal. And I'm kind of expecting Auburn, to maybe bounce back a little bit, so we'll see how far they'll go. We got Indiana here taking on Kent State here in the 4 versus 13 matchup. This is a pretty good Kent State team. You don't want to really sleep on them. Indiana's a really good, sneaky good team, but, Kent State, you never know about them. Then we got Drake here and Miami taking on each other in the 12 versus 5 matchup. So that's the left side. To the right side now, Texas is number 2 here, coming off that Big 12 championship win against Kansas, so they're on a pretty big run there. They'll play Colgate here in the first round, the 15 seed. Then in the 7 versus 10 matchup, it will be Texas A&M taking on Penn State. Texas A&M losing to Alabama in the SEC title, and that's a pretty high seed there for Texas A&M. I kind of expected them to maybe be a number 5 seed or maybe a number 6 seed, but overall they get to a number 7 seed. They will take on Penn State here, who is number 10 here on this bracket. Then they'll play. Then, of course, the number 3 versus number 14 matchup, it will be Xavier versus Kennesaw State here in the number 14 versus number 3 matchup. Pretty good Xavier team. And then the Iowa State Cyclones here at number 6. They'll be the number 6 seed in this Midwest region. And they'll play the winner of the Mississippi State versus Pittsburgh first 4 game. We'll make a prediction on that one in just a minute. So Iowa State will wait, to who they'll play maybe on Thursday or Friday. So pretty good Midwest region bracket. Houston was no surprise to be the number 1 seed. I think this will be a wide open region perhaps. I think every region is going to be wide open. Let's now go to the East region. Number 1 overall seed is going to be the Purdue Boilermakers. No surprise there. Purdue's been the dominant team in the Big Ten all year. They'll play the winner of Texas CC. They've been in the tournament, or Texas Southern, I should say. They've been in the tournament for a very long time now, it seems like. They'll play their first 4 matchup with FDU. So the winner of this one in the first 4 will play against Purdue in the first round of the East region. And then in the 9 versus 8 matchup, this is probably going to be a good one here between FAU and Memphis. Also known as Florida Atlantic. This will be a pretty good matchup. Memphis has been on quite of a winning streak as of late, and FAU could really pull off an upset. You never know, but we got a bunch of really good 9 and 8 seeded matchups. I mean, we're looking forward to these 8 and 9 matchups, perhaps. So, that will be a good one there in the East region. Then we got Tennessee here at number 4. They'll be taking on Louisiana Monroe, or actually the Raging Canes here. This should be a pretty tough matchup for Tennessee. Of course, Zakiya Ziegler not playing for Tennessee. That really hurts them. Maybe their chances to win this first round game. That will be the number 4 versus number 13 matchup. And then Duke here at number 5. They're ranked number 5 here in the in this region. They'll play against Oral Roberts here. A pretty good Oral Roberts team. They're 30-4 on the year. It's not really about the overall records, but they've won 30 games this year, so this could be a really tricky game here for Duke. And then the number 2 seed is Marquette. I mean, that's a pretty surprise team there. Marquette's been really good this year, and they really have a lot of talent on both ends of the floor. And I think this is one of the most fastest teams in this NCAA tournament, perhaps. They'll play Vermont here in the first round. Then the 7 versus 10 matchup, it will be Michigan State taking on USC. This will be a pretty good one here. Then in the number 3 versus number 14 matchup, it will be Kansas State here taking on Montana State. Should be a pretty good one there between those 2 teams. And then in the 6-11 matchup, we got Kentucky taking on Providence. Kentucky's been an up-and-down team this year, lost in the quarterfinal to Vanderbilt. A lot of people are not really hyped for this Kentucky team heading into the NCAA tournament. But that's the East region. It's a pretty tough region. You got Purdue here, and you got Duke here in Tennessee and Kentucky. But overall, it should be a pretty wide-open region. Let's now go to the last region, and that's the West region. We got Kansas here as the number 1 overall seed. No surprise there. They are the defending national champions from last year, so we'll see if they can repeat. And then they'll play Howard here in the first round. That's the 16th seed here in the West region. And then in the 9 versus 8 matchup, another really good matchup here, the 9 versus 8 seed, and that's Illinois taking on Arkansas. Arkansas, tough loss in the SEC semifinal matchup against Texas A&M. I think this is a really well-motivated Arkansas team. Maybe they could be one of those Cinderella teams that heads to the Elite Eight perhaps, but it will be a tough one there. And then the 13 versus 4 matchup here, we got Ncaa here taking on UConn. This will be a pretty good matchup. Of course, Rick Pitino there with the Gals here. I don't really know how to pronounce that college name. I really have a hard time with it. But UConn will probably, be a team that can make a Cinderella run here in the NCAA tournament. And then in 12 versus 5 matchup, we'll have VCU here versus St. Mary's. This is a pretty good VCU team. This will be a team that probably could make a run at the Final Four or maybe perhaps the Elite Eight. So watch out for that VCU team. And then in the number 2 seed, we got UCLA here, the number 2 seed, taking on the number 15 seed, that is UNC Asheville. They'll play them in the first round, so UCLA, the number 2 seed here in the West region. In the 7 versus 10 matchup, we got Boise State taking on Northwestern. This will be a pretty good matchup here in the West region, the 10 versus 7 matchup. And then the number 3 versus number 14 matchup. We got Gonzaga here at number 3. It really shocked me that Gonzaga's number 3 here. I guess they just haven't been that good this year as we thought they were going to be. And then they'll take on Grand Canyon here, the number 14 seed. And then the number 6 team here in this region is TCU. They'll play the winner of Arizona State or Nevada in the 11 seeded matchup, the first 4 matchup. And like I said, we'll get to those predictions in just a minute. But the West region overall is going to be pretty exciting. I mean, you got VCU, who's a team that could probably make a jump there, and then you got UConn here in this region. We got pretty good matchups here with especially Arkansas at Illinois there, and they got VCU and St. Mary's. So anything can happen in March Madness. Anything can happen in this March Madness tournament. Let's now get to the first 4 predictions here. We're going to start with this one here. We got TAMU CC taking on Southeast Missouri. This should be a pretty good matchup here. TAMU CC, I haven't really heard about them. I've heard about Southeast Missouri, though. Both of these teams, the winner of this one will play Alabama in the first round of the tournament. And let's make our first official pick here for this NCAA tournament bracket. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And then you got CC there. That's a university school. So I got them winning that one over Southeast Missouri State. And I think they'll move on to the NCAA tournament where they'll play Alabama in the first round. So that's my first 4. That's my first pick. That's for the, I believe, the South region, I believe. So, all right, moving on. Moving on to Mississippi State here in Pittsburgh. This should be a really good matchup here. Mississippi State, is in the, I think Mississippi State is in the East region, I believe. So this one right here, Mississippi State taking on Pitt. This will be a pretty good one here in the first 4. This is a pretty tough prediction, here in this, in this first 4 matchup. I mean, this one is going to be really determining who will probably get that really good run in the NCAA tournament. But this one, is going to be a pretty good one here between Mississippi State and Pitt. And like I said, I don't know about much of college basketball, but I'm going to go with Mississippi State here just based off of how they beat Florida in that, opening round game in that first game, or that quarterfinal game, I should say, against Florida there in the SEC tournament. I think this will be a well-motivated Mississippi State team. Kind of looking forward to see what they do down the stretch. So this one is in the Midwest region, I believe. Yes, it is. I think it actually is. No, it's not. It's not in the Midwest. I think this is actually in the West. So I think, the winner of this one actually does play. Actually, the winner of this one will play Iowa State. So the winner will play this one, play against Iowa State there in the next round, and that's the East region. So that's the East region. The winner of this one will play against Iowa State. So it will be Mississippi State taking on Iowa State. Let's now go into the next first 4 game, and that is. That is CC there, Texas CC, and then they'll take on here the Knights here in this one. The winner of this one will play against Purdue. It's Texas Southern versus FDU Knights. Texas Southern's been in the NCAA tournament now for a few years, and I kind of like this team. I kind of like the motivation from this team, and I'm going to go with Texas Southern here to defeat this FDU team, or whatever the real university name is and everything. And like I said, I don't know much about college basketball. I really never heard of these teams. So, and like I said, if you want to see more basketball content on this channel, let me know down in the comments below. But, I'm going to go with Texas Southern here. So they will play against Purdue in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Let's now go to the last first 4 game, and that's Arizona State out of the Pac-12 taking on Nevada. This one's a pretty tough one to pick. Arizona State, I know they're a Power 5 team. They should roll over in this one. And then, of course, Nevada. But we never know about these March Madness games. Anything can happen in March Madness. I think these two teams are going to go back and forth. I think this will be probably probably the second best first four game besides Pittsburgh and Mississippi State. And with that being said, in a close game, I'm going to go with Nevada here to advance to the NCAA tournament. So that means that Nevada will take on Iowa State, I believe, here in the in the next round or something like that, or maybe somebody else. If I get these wrong, I'm really sorry about it. Actually, they'll take on TCU. They'll take on TCU there against the 6th seed, so it will be Nevada taking on TCU in the West region. So those are the matchups for the first four, and like I said, I picked Nevada. I also picked, Texas Southern to go on to the NCAA tournament, but we'll get to those later on. Let's now go to the official predictions for the 2023 March Madness tournament. So we'll start with the South region here. We got Alabama taking on the 16 seed here. I gotta go with Alabama here. I think they roll over against Texas A&M or something like that, whatever they are called, University or something like that. So I think Alabama will roll over in this first round matchup. I think they have no business to lose this game, but you never know. You never know. I mean, the only time a number one seed has gone out, that was Virginia back then, so it's happened before. But Alabama should roll over in this game. They have no business to lose that game. Let's go to the number 9 versus 8 matchup. We got Maryland taking on West Virginia. This should be a pretty good one here between the 8 and 9 seeded matchups. And I got Maryland in this game. I got Maryland moving on to the second round to face Alabama here. I think this will be a close game, though. I think it will be back and forth. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Maryland here to advance to the second round. Let's go now to the number 13 versus number 4 matchup. We got Virginia taking on Furman. And like I said, this is a good Furman team. I'm kind of expecting them to go really far into the NCAA tournament. Not really that far, but I think, it's going to be a game that, can come down to the wire. We've seen Virginia have problems in the past in the NCAA tournaments. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Furman here to pull off an upset. I'm going to go with the upset here. It's my first upset here on the bracket, for any of the other brackets. So I'm going to go with Furman here to knock off Virginia in the first round of the South region. The next matchup is going to be San Diego State and Charleston. Charleston is a team that you don't want to sleep on. This is a team that has 30 wins on the year. Like I said, it's not about the overall record for all of these teams, but Charleston's going to be a team to look out for in this tournament. They shoot the ball well, like they said. So Charleston taking on San Diego State here. But I think this will kind of be similar to the Furman versus Virginia game. It does come down to the wire. And like I said, with that being said, I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to have Charleston knock off San Diego State here in the first round of the South region bracket. And I got them taking on Furman here in the second round. So we'll get a double-digit matchup in the round of 32. So I'm kind of looking forward to that matchup there if it happens. Moving on to the other side, we got Arizona taking on Princeton Tigers here. I got Arizona winning that one easily there and moving on to the second round. Next matchup is Missouri and Utah State. The winner of this one will take on Arizona. What a matchup this will be, a well-motivating Missouri team. I think this is Missouri's first NCAA tournament appearance in a long time. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do in their first, NCAA tournament berth with their first-year head coach. But this will be a back-and-forth game against Utah State, a Utah State team that's really good, enough to compete with this Missouri team. But I'm going to go with Missouri here. I like the motivation from this team. I like the motivation from their first-year head coach. I'm going to go with the Tigers here to move on to the round of 32. Next one is Baylor taking on UCSB here in the 3 versus 4 team matchup. Baylor's been kind of up and down lately. I know they haven't had a really good season as they really did not expect them to be. But, this one right here I think will motivate them enough. But, this UCSB team will be really good enough to compete with this Baylor team. At the end of the day, though, I'm going to go with the Bears here to move on to the round of 32. We're in a really close game. It won't be an easy win, though, for Baylor. So I'm going to go with the Bears there to move on to the round of 32. Next game, Creighton taking on NC State here in the 6 versus 11 matchup. This is a well-motivated Creighton team. They should really make a big run in the NCAA tournament. NC State, though, is a team that you don't want to sleep on. They just got enough. They're going to probably be a sneaky good team there in the NCAA tournament. This is a pretty tough one to predict, but I'm going to go with Creighton here to move on to the round of 32. So we got a round of 32 matchup set now. Let's go to the first one. Alabama taking on Maryland. This will be a pretty good game here, but I think Alabama's just really too talented for Maryland's roster. I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide here to move on to the Sweet 16. So I got Alabama moving on there in the Sweet 16 of this South region. And then you got Charleston and Furman here, two double-digit seeds here going at it in the round of 32. I think this will be a high-scoring game. I think I'm going to, I'm kind of expecting this one to happen, but like I said, you never know when it comes to March Madness. Maybe they don't really get into the round of 32. Maybe San Diego State and Virginia will play in this matchup, but I got to tell you, this one will be a matchup to look forward to in this NCAA tournament. And with that being said, with this matchup here, like I said, it's going to go back and forth. I'm going to pick Charleston. I'm going to go with Charleston here to defeat Furman here by at least maybe like 3 points or something like that. So I got Charleston moving on to the Sweet 16. Maybe they're one of those Cinderella teams that makes it really far to the Sweet 16. And we've seen some double-digit seeds go to the Sweet 16 in the past, so it's happened before. We've seen a double-digit seed go to the Final Four as well, so I'm kind of expecting Charleston, to maybe make it to the Sweet 16 perhaps. So I'm going to go with them, to play Alabama in the Sweet 16. Moving on, Arizona taking on Missouri here in this one. I really don't see Missouri pulling off an upset here. I like the motivation from this team, but I'm going to go with Arizona here. I think they're really too talented, for Missouri to, handle. So I'm going to go with the Wildcats here over Missouri here in the round of 32. Baylor taking on Creighton here, the number 3 versus 6 matchup. Like I said, Baylor's been up and down lately. They're probably going to have a tough time in this NCAA tournament. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Creighton here to pull off the upset. I'm going to go with Creighton here to move on to the Sweet 16, and I got them playing Arizona here in the Sweet 16 of the South region. So let's now go to the Sweet 16 games. We got Alabama taking on Charleston here in the Sweet 16, also known as the region semifinal. This will be a pretty good one here. Alabama, Charleston, do they have enough motivation to compete with this Alabama team? I really don't think they do. I think Alabama does win this one and moves on to the Elite Eight. I don't think they're going to win it that big, but I think Alabama does beat Charleston here to move on to the Elite Eight. And then Arizona and Creighton here, I'm going to pick Arizona to win this one over Creighton, so I'm going to pick Arizona here to move on to the Elite Eight as well. And that leaves us with the top 2 teams here in the South region of the Elite Eight here and also the region championship game. We got Alabama versus Arizona. These are 2 great teams. This is a pretty tough call to make. I think Alabama, though, is really just too talented. They got a talented roster. They can shoot the basketball. And I'm going to go with Alabama. I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide here to win this region. And I got them advancing to the Final Four of this NCAA tournament. So that's our first region that we predicted. Let's go now to the Midwest region. So the first matchup, we got Houston taking on Northern Kentucky. I got Houston winning that one pretty easily, and I think they really probably roll over in that game. They have no business, but you never know about it. So I think Houston does win that one over Northern Kentucky. And then we got the 9 versus 8 matchup. This will be another pretty good 9 versus 8 matchup. We got Auburn versus Iowa. I know Auburn kind of lost, really badly to Arkansas in that quarterfinal matchup. I'm kind of, expecting them to come out really hot there, in this NCAA tournament. And I think that's what happens. I think, they got the motivation from Bruce Pearl enough to defeat this Iowa team. I think it will be a close game, though, and I got Auburn moving on to the Midwest region, or actually the round of 32 to play Houston there. And then the next matchup is going to be Kent State versus number 4, Indiana. This one was a back-and-forth call for me. Kent State, obviously, is a team that you don't want to sleep on in the NCAA tournament. Indiana, though, could be a sneaky good team in the NCAA tournament as well. Kent State, though, I like the motivation from this team and a lot of hype coming in for this team as well. I'm going to go with Kent State. I'm going to go with the upset here. I've already gotten a few upsets in this NCAA tournament. I made a couple upsets there in the first round of the South region, and now we're going to make an upset here in the first round in the Midwest region. And I got Kent State moving on to the round of 32. Next up, it's Miami and Drake University here, the 5 versus 12 matchup. I do like this Drake motivation team, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Miami here. I think Miami is the only team that makes it out of there, the number 5 seed to make it out of there in the first round. And I think Miami will be motivated enough to go into that next round in the Midwest region. So we're going to go with Miami here to play against Kent State here in the Midwest region. Moving on to the other side, we got Texas taking on Colgate here, and I got Texas rolling over in that game. So this is a pretty well motivation Longhorns team. Of course, they beat Kansas in the Big 12 championship pretty badly. Of course, Kansas though was without Belt Self. He was in the hospital and everything. So I think Texas will defeat Colgate here in the first round. Moving along, we got Texas A&M taking on Penn State. What a matchup this is going to be. Texas A&M. Could we see like a Texas versus Texas A&M matchup in the second round? That is possible, but I do like this Penn State team. I'm going to go with the upset here as well. I'm going to pick the Nittany Lions here to knock off Texas A&M here in the first round of the Midwest region, and I got them playing Texas here in the second round of this Midwest region bracket. Moving on, Xavier taking on Kennesaw State. I got Xavier winning that one pretty easily. I think this is a pretty good Xavier team, and I think they do move on to the round of 32. Next up, we got Iowa State taking on Mississippi State here. The 6-11 matchup here. Iowa State, really well-motivated team, and also Mississippi State, fresh off that first 4 win. And I got to tell you, I really like the motivation from this Mississippi State team. I know they, got knocked out of the SEC tournament and got beat badly by Alabama, but I think they'll be well-motivated after that first 4 win, if it's possible. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with the upset here. Mississippi State pulling off of the upset against Iowa State here in the first round of the Midwest region. And I got the Bulldogs moving on to the round of 32. So we got 2 SEC teams here in the Midwest region. Moving on to the round of 32 games. Houston will take on Auburn here. This will be a back-and-forth game. I don't think it will be an easy game here for Houston. I think Bruce Pearl will have this team motivated. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Houston here to defeat Auburn by a really close game. And I got the Cougars moving on to the Sweet 16. Moving along to the number 5 versus 13 matchup. We got Kent State here taking on Miami. What a matchup this is going to be. This is probably going to be a back-and-forth game. I think all these games pretty much will be dogfights, maybe in the round of 32s. But Kent State is really talented. Miami's really talented as well. At the end of the day, though, it really came down to an upset. It really came down to the upset. I'm going to go with Kent State here to knock off Miami in the round of 32, also known as the second round. I'm going to pick the Golden Eagles here to move on to the Sweet 16, and that's where they'll play Houston there in the Sweet 16 round. So moving along, Penn State and Texas here in the number 2 versus number 10 matchup. I got Texas winning that one. Not really easily, but I think this will be a game that can come down to the wire as well, but I think Texas will be motivated enough to win this one, so I'm going to pick the Longhorns. Next one will be Xavier taking on Mississippi State. Does Mississippi State pull off the upset here in this matchup like they did to Iowa State to make it 3 in a row? I really don't see that happening. However, it could happen if they make it that way, but I'm going to pick Xavier here to move on to the Sweet 16. The Sweet 16 matchups now, Houston taking on Kent State here, another double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, like I did in the South region. And with this being said here, I would have gone with the upset here, but at the end of the day, I think Houston is just too talented for Kent State here. And I'm going to go with Houston here to move on to the Midwest region championship game, but also the Elite Eight. So I'm going to go with the Cougars here to knock off Kent State, and I got them moving on to the Elite Eight. Next matchup is Texas taking on Xavier. This should be a pretty good matchup here. It's really possible that we could see a Houston versus Texas matchup here in the Elite Eight, and you're going to get that for me. I got Texas taking on Houston here in the Elite Eight. I got them also beating Xavier by a close game here, and I think all these games in March Madness are going to be really close games, maybe some in the first half, and then they'll start to pull away perhaps, but I got Texas, though, moving on to the Midwest region final. And then we get Houston here versus Texas here, battled between two Texas states here. We got Houston taking on Texas. This should be a really good game. And this will be the first upset here of this, of these regions here in the regional final. I'm going to go with Texas here to knock off Houston in the Elite Eight. And I got Texas moving on to the Final Four. And I also got them winning this Midwest region. And I know it kind of sounds crazy that I would put Texas there in the Final Four. I just like the motivation from this team. I really like the motivation after what they did in that Big 12 championship, and I think that win streak will continue to maybe possibly go to the Final Four. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think Texas will be motivated enough, to move on to the Final Four for the Midwest region. So I think Texas will win that one, and I think they'll be Midwest region champions. Moving on to the East region, Purdue, the number 1 seed, will take on Texas Southern here. This should be a game that Purdue should take care of business in. I think they do there in the first round of the game. Number 1 seeds do have problems in the first round sometimes, but I think Purdue won't have any problems, so I'm going to go with the Boilermakers here in the first round. All right, this one is probably going to be the best number 9 versus 8 matchup, and it's FAU taking on Memphis. What a matchup this is going to be. Memphis coming off a huge winning streak. FAU also a winning streak. And I think this will be a game that really decides it all. Who's going to go on that big magical run, perhaps. But at the end of the day, I like the motivation from Florida Atlantic University. I'm going to go with FAU here over Memphis, and I got them winning this one and moving on to the round of 32 matchup against Purdue. Tennessee next playing against Louisiana Raging Canes here. This could be a really tough matchup here for Tennessee. Of course, they're without Zakiya Ziegler, and this will be a really, really tough game here for Tennessee. But at the end of the day, I think they'll be well motivated enough, and I think Tennessee will defeat Louisiana here in the first round. Next up, we got Duke taking on ORU here, also the Golden Eagles. This is a really good team that Duke is playing. It's not going to be an easy game, but I just think Duke is really too talented enough for their roster, and I think Duke does move on here to the round of 32. So we'll get probably a Tennessee versus Duke matchup here in the second round. Let's go to the other side. We got Marquette here, the number 2 seed, taking on Vermont. I got Marquette winning that one pretty easily. I really don't see any problems with this team heading into their first round matchup. Next one is Michigan State taking on USC. What a matchup this will be, the number 7 versus number 10 matchup. Michigan State's been kind of up and down this year. They've been just a quiet team overall. With that being said, I'm going to go with USC here for the upset. So I got this second upset here in the East region. So I'm going to go with USC here to pull off the upset against Michigan State. It wouldn't really be a big shock if Michigan State did lose that game. But like I said, I'm going to go with the Trojans here to move on to the second round. Next one is Kansas State taking on Montana State here. This will be the number 3 versus 14 matchup. I got Kansas State winning that one pretty easily. I really don't see any problems with them. Maybe in the first half it really is close, but second half I think the Wildcats will pull away. And speaking of Wildcats, we got Kentucky here taking on Providence, the 6 versus 11 matchup. Kentucky's been a really up and down team this year. Will the motivation be there now for them? They got eliminated in the first round last year, the NCAA tournament. Could that happen this time? I don't really think so, but it could happen again. But I'm going to pick Kentucky here to move on to the round of 32 in the East region, and that leaves us to the round of 32 games. We got Purdue taking on Florida Atlantic here. I think this Florida Atlantic team will really compete against Purdue, but at the end of the day, I just think Purdue is way too talented, and I'm going to pick Purdue to move on to the Sweet 16. Next up is Tennessee and Duke, the number 4 versus number 5 matchup. This is a matchup I kind of want to see in the NCAA tournament, but the injuries have been killing Tennessee and Duke. We just don't know how good they're going to be in this tournament. We've seen Duke kind of choke in the NCAA tournament every single year. At the end of the day, though, with the injuries, to Tennessee, I'm going to pick Duke here to knock off Tennessee here in the round of 32. It really isn't a big upset, to be honest. I mean, Duke has got a really talented roster. So does Tennessee, but I think the Blue Devils do win that one. Moving on to the other side, Marquette taking on USC. This will be a pretty good matchup here. Marquette taking on USC. I think Marquette does defeat USC here in the round of 32. I like the motivation from this Marquette team. This is a Final Four team, perhaps, heading into that March Madness. Then we got a Wildcat versus Wildcat matchup here. We got Kansas State taking on Kentucky. These two teams met in the 2018 NCAA tournament. Kansas State was able to beat them in the Sweet 16. And I really like the motivation from this Kansas State team, based off of how Kentucky has been, kind of choking lately these days. I'm going to go with Kansas State here to knock off Kentucky here in the round of 32. I think it will be a back and forth game, though. At the end of the day, I think Kansas State has got really enough steam to, knock off Kentucky in that round of 32 game. Moving on to the Sweet 16 games now, we got Purdue taking on Duke. This is a really good matchup here. Duke, obviously, like I said, we don't know how good they're going to be. Look, things happen in the, Sweet 16, and I think Purdue, obviously, is the better team here to Duke. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with Duke here to knock off Purdue here in the Sweet 16. And I got Duke moving on to the Elite Eight, and also known as the East Final, so East Regional Final. And I got Duke moving on. I just like the motivation from this team, from their first-year head coach as well. So I got the Blue Devils moving on to the Elite Eight. All right, Marquette versus Kansas State here in the Sweet 16. What a matchup this is going to be. Does Marquette have enough really, to maybe compete against a really good Big 12 team like Kansas State? I don't really think so. I'm going to go with Kansas State here to knock off Marquette. I don't really consider it to being an upset either, just because it's a number 3 versus number 2 matchup. But I'm going to go with the Wildcats here to advance to the Elite Eight, and that leaves us with Duke versus Kansas State here in the East Regional Final. What a matchup this will be between the Blue Devils taking on the Wildcats. We got the Big 12 versus ACC. Duke, obviously, went to the Final Four last year. Could they make it 2 years in a row? I really don't think that's going to happen. I think Kansas State knocks off Duke here in the Elite Eight, and I got Kansas State moving on to the Final Four. I know that sounds crazy and all, but I think Kansas State is probably the most motivating team coming into this East Region tournament. And I think the Wildcats do knock off the Blue Devils here in the Elite Eight. So that's the East Region. Kansas State moves on to the Final Four. All right, moving on to the last region, the West region. We got Kansas, the number 1 seed, taking on Howard University here, the 16 seed. Kansas will win that one pretty easily there. They should really have take care of business in that one. However, Kansas, has played inconsistent at times. You saw that in the Big 12 championship against Texas. So it's possible they could have a bad game. But I think Kansas should really take care of business in that first round game. We got a really good matchup here. The number 9 versus number 8 matchup here. We got Arkansas taking on Illinois. What a 8 versus 9 matchup this is going to be. Arkansas losing a really close game in the semifinal to Texas A&M. They just kind of really choked down the stretch there in that game. But this will be a well-motivated Arkansas team, and it's well-motivated that they move on to the round of 32, and they'll get a matchup here with Kansas, hopefully. Like I said, this has not happened yet. The games won't even start until about Tuesday and also Wednesday. That's the first 4 games, and the real games don't begin until Thursday. So moving on to the 13 versus number 4 matchup, we got UConn taking on the Gales here. I'm just going to say that for now on because I don't know how to pronounce their university. But UConn taking on the Gales here. Rick Pitino down there for that university. UConn, well-motivating team. They're also a fast team, but I like the motivation from this Rick Pitino team and also this university. I'm going to go with the Gals here to pull off the upset against the Huskies. So I'm going to go with them here to move on to the round of 32. Rick Pitino's been in the NCAA tournament a lot, his career, so I think he'll get his team ready, and I think they do knock off UConn here in the first round. VCU taking on St. Mary's here in the 12 versus number 5 matchup. This is a really good VCU team. They like to pressure the basketball. They like to full court press as well. And and with that being said, I'm going to go with VCU here to pull off the upset in the first round. So we got a number 12 seed moving on to the second round. We've had that, in some of these regions that we've done already. So I got VCU. We'll have another double-digit seed here in the second round matchup. So We've seen that already in, I believe, the first region. So VCU will take on the gals here of, Ona University. I think that's how you pronounce it, but I really don't know. So UCLA taking on their number 15 seed here. I think they do win their first round game, and I think UCLA moves on to the round of 32 easily. Next matchup, we got Boise State here at Northwestern, the 10 versus 7 matchup. This will be a close game. I'm kind of expecting this one to go back and forth as well. But I like Boise State in this one. I'm going to go with the upset here as well. And I got Boise State moving on to the second round, and where they'll play UCLA here in the second round. Then we got Gonzaga taking on Grand Canyon. Gonzaga wins this one big. I really don't see Gonzaga having any problems here in this one against Grand Canyon. They'll move on. The winner will play, the winner, TCU or Nevada, they'll play them here in the second round. We got TCU taking on Nevada. I think this will be a close game here. I think Nevada will compete, but I think TCU is good enough to move on to the second round. So we got TCU taking on Gonzaga in that second round of the West region. First matchup of the round of 32, Kansas taking on Arkansas. This will be a back-and-forth game. This is a really well-motivating Arkansas team. They are hungry for this West region. But, Kansas, I think they're just really too talented enough, and I think Bill Self will have that team ready. And I think Kansas does move on to the Sweet 16 once again in back-to-back years. Moving along to the Anna here and also VCU matchup. We got another double-digit seed matchup here in the second round. VCU, that, like I said, is going to be a really good team in this region. And with that being said, I'm going to go with VCU here. I really love this VCU team, and I have them going to the Sweet 16. Like I said, we've already seen some double-digit seeds move on to the Sweet 16 already. We've had Kent State already move on to the Sweet 16, so it could happen again. I really like the motivation from all these teams, and also we've seen that one in the South region. And these double-digit seeds, you don't really want to sleep on them in this NCAA tournament. This NCAA tournament's going to be wide open. Moving along to the UCLA versus Boise State matchup, I think UCLA does win that one over Boise State in a close game, and I got the Bruins moving on to the Sweet 16. Gonzaga taking on TCU here. Gonzaga wins that one. I really don't see any problems with Gonzaga here in this region. I don't know how they're number 3 seed, but you don't really want to sleep on them in this West region. They really could make a run to the Final Four. Like I said, we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but this is simply a prediction. We're going to do our best here to try to get a perfect bracket, but it's not even possible. All right, moving on to the Sweet 16 games. We got Kansas taking on VCU. Does VCU have enough talent to beat Kansas? Yes, they do, but I think Kansas does win this one at the end of the day, and they move on to the Elite Eight once again like they were from last year. And I think the Jayhawks knock off VCU here in the Sweet 16 in a close game. Same thing with UCLA and Gonzaga. This will be another close game here in this West region. At the end of the day, though, I do like Gonzaga here in this one. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs of Gonzaga here to move on to the Elite Eight. So I got the Gonzaga Bulldogs moving on to the Elite Eight where they'll face Kansas. And, Kansas has been an up-and-down team lately. Of course, losing that Big 12 championship pretty big. And like I said, you never know what can happen in the NCAA tournament. Kansas could really choke in this one. And I think they do right here. I think Gonzaga does win the Elite Eight here. And I think they do win the West Regional Final. And I think they move on to the Final Four as well. So we got Gonzaga moving on to the Final Four. And I think they do win this West region. Let's now go to the Final Four. So this is the Final Four teams on my bracket predictions. We got Alabama from the South. We got Kansas State, I believe, from the East. Texas as well. And then we got Gonzaga here as the number 3 seed. So we got Kansas State, who's the number 3 seed, and then we got Texas here as a number 2 seed. So we got 2 Big 12 teams here and 1 SEC team. So let's now make my official predictions for this Final Four, which will be located in Houston. These will be, the first one will be on Saturday. The Final Four games will be on Saturday, and the championship game will be on a Monday. Let's start with Kansas State taking on Alabama. Close game here, I believe, between these two teams. Alabama, though, I think has enough talent to move on to the championship game, and I think the Crimson Tide do move on to the Final Four, or actually the championship. So Alabama, I think, will beat Kansas State here in a close game. Moving on to the second game here, Texas taking on Gonzaga. This will be a back and forth game, but like I said, I like the motivation from both of these teams, but I really like the motivation even more to this Texas team. So I'm going to go with Texas here to knock off Gonzaga here in the Final Four, and I got Texas moving on to the national championship. So instead of football, we'll probably get an Alabama versus Texas matchup here in basketball. Of course, both of these teams will be in the same conference next year. How do I see this championship game goes if it happens? Well, I think Alabama does have the better roster. They have the better talent, but Texas, I think they're well motivated enough. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Texas here to win the national championship. So Texas is my pick to win the national championship in 2023, and I also got the score prediction at 71-67. And with that being in their hometown as well in Texas, I'm going to go with Texas here to knock off Alabama in the national championship. So Texas is my pick to win the national championship in 2023. I want to say good luck to all of you guys on your brackets, and hopefully you'll get a perfect bracket, maybe not, but also maybe win maybe a grand prize or something like that. But again, let me know if you guys want to see any more basketball content on this channel starting next year on this channel as well. We'll continue to do those football projection and also schedule preview videos each and every single day. But again, Texas is my pick to win the national championship. Let me guys know what you think about this pick. What do you think what upsets do you think will happen, and also in the NCAA tournament? And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.